political ecosystem is a very different ecosystem than the business ecosystem. And the way success is materialized is very different from the way success is materialized on the business side. It's a mission, it's a personal mission that one must feel inside themselves in order to go that route, because it's a lot worse as a personal experience from my expectations compared to starting a startup, which is already difficult and struggling and painful and all that.
Soul-crushing.
I'm a board member of the Romanian Business Leaders Foundation. So I believe it's, together with Romanian business leaders, I believe that it is in our hands as business people to create a better society, and it is much more in our hands than it is in the politicians' hands. So if we create a business environment where we, work hard, ethically, pay our dues, we are considerate of all the stakeholders of the businesses, including the society at large, then we probably, by us working together and helping each other to learn faster, to build faster, to be, if you want, less obsessed about the greatness of what we have built and more about the opportunities that lie ahead of us in order to get to the next level, then probably this is the ecosystem that can create a systemic change.
Hello, Recursive community. For this episode, we have invited visionary entrepreneur who knows one or two things about business growth, international markets, and fundraising. Sergiu Negut is the co-founder of FintechOS, one of the region's fastest growing companies. And this year, in May, they announced a 60 million Series B round. Besides leading a tech company, Sergiu is teaching entrepreneurial courses at the Bucharest International School of Management, is still an active angel investor, and the founding partner of the healthcare-focused Cleverage VC. Sergiu, it's been high time that you actually joined me for a podcast episode.
Yeah, trust me, I always wanted and waited for, but for some reason...
We never invited you.
No, you never invited me, and then you invited me, and then I couldn't do it on those dates, and then, I had to wait another 6 months, and so now finally we're together. I'm really, really happy.
I have to say that you always had credit on my end, because I remember, and lately, especially around the How to Web, I am a bit nostalgic. I just remember first time when we traveled to Bucharest for the How to Web. We tried to reach out to people that we would consider ecosystem builders, and we reached out to you. And although you were very busy already at that point, you sat with us for at least an hour and told us what to do. And you made me a map that actually has helped me a lot since then. So I was never really pissed that you couldn't find the time afterwards.
Thank you. That's kind.
Yeah, it was very helpful at this point, especially because we were pretty much nobody, especially here in Romania. And I felt very welcomed by the community back then, especially because of people like you and Bogdan and so on and so forth.
Yeah, but this is a belief, that I have, and if I'm thinking what a bigger purpose and stuff like that, then what I think that I can contribute to is to create a powerful ecosystem. And I have this secondary belief, which is, again, totally not proven. It's not scientifically proven, but it's me that, if you start creating a powerful ecosystem where people benefit of introducing each other to opportunities and stuff like that, then this somehow comes back to you and rewards you. And so for me, putting together things for everyone who is working somehow in favor of the ecosystem is essential. So to have that transparency, who does where all the relevant players and so on, is essential for us to acknowledge what good we bring to the community and how we can basically work together for a more powerful market, more powerful ecosystem, more powerful startups, investors, other participants in the ecosystems that create the stories that inspire all the others. So very happy to be here.
Yeah, I think this is also one of our core beliefs, that if we tell their stories, we would actually inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. This is why we started it, but at least, For me, it's a sign that, in a way, you believe that we could also develop over time. Because back then, I don't think that we had a lot of traction. So
it's even worse than that. So not only that I believed in you, but I saw there was a void in the market in making sure that there is someone that has enough, journalism muscle and at the same time understanding of how the market works in order to help crystallize some stories, to help create some opinions, to give some coverage to some stories that needed to be told and not by the traditional media. And I think this is where you stepped in and you made something. And there is another angle to it, and that is the regional angle. I believe that our markets in the region are too small to be independent and to be so self-centered and so self-focused as the larger markets in Europe. So I think we have a destiny together in creating a more powerful, let's say, Southeast European, Central Eastern European, Balkanic, doesn't really matter the label, ecosystem that qualifies all of us and gives us enough reach and enough audience in order to be a match for our counterparts in more developed markets.
This is very much true. I totally underline this thesis. And I think this is what we have also been trying to prove for the past years. Now I'm actually curious also to hear from you. Do you think that we have progressed? Do you think that we are now maybe a bit less self-centered and we are more ready to collaborate because we see that this is how we can make maybe the pie a bit bigger?
Not at all. No, I'm kidding. No, but I think we made a good progress. I think we made a good progress. So I think, you look at, we're just coming out of How to Web, and you look at the presence of international investors, which is very interesting because what you see some very distant funds that are from faraway land that are coming for the first time here. And some of them are the, associate principal level. Some of them are at full partner level already. Then you have some of the more distant funds that are coming for the second or the third time. And they are coming with, let's say, even more senior presence and with more people. And then you have the neighboring funds that are coming like with their entire team. Exactly. Like they deploy like, this week is Bucharest. Everybody in Bucharest. Doesn't really matter. The rest of the universe doesn't exist this week. So I think it's in a way an acknowledgement of, hey, there are a number of opportunities when we get together in different places, and and if it's How to Web, that's Bucharest, and everybody has to be there because everybody else is there. So I think it's in a way we are doing that, and then I'm celebrating, for instance, the access of Bulgarian funds to the Romanian Restructuring and Resilience Program of funding the funds, which is something, again, very, very it was very surprising to me that they applied, and it was even more surprising that they got the license to use the funds. But then, again, I think it's an excellent opportunity to mix and match on the opportunities of creating or working on a larger market. One of our best moving investments in Cleverage VC so far is a Bulgarian firm. Another one is a Czech firm. So I think another one is a Greek firm. But so I think these are all examples of this, common. I'm not necessarily saying a common market, but let's say a common ecosystem that already has legs. And jumps jumps and punches above their weight.
Yes, exactly. And it's also very cool to see when there is like a big story, the investors from those foreign lands, they look at that and say, what, Romania or Bulgaria? And somehow, a unicorn here or a success story here makes much bigger waves than, I don't know, the next unicorn somewhere in France or in Germany. And this is what attracts them. And then they start thinking, actually, that's a great opportunity here. We don't want these companies to be in our anti-portfolio. We already missed the big one, which is UiPath. I wonder also, how is this development affecting the development also of FintechOS? I think UiPath put our region pretty much on the map for those who didn't even know where Bucharest is. And all those to follow, they, I think, probably have it a bit easier. But is it true? What do you see?
Definitely, it's true. And it already ignited, if you want, a big change about 5 years ago, when UiPath first became a unicorn, and it was at the time the first unicorn from the space that we're talking about. So it was quite surprising to see, and I remember we had a very small startup. Maybe we had like 20 people hired, and we were in discussion for the seed, or we just got the seed, and we were looking for the Series A. But I still remember reading the news about UiPath getting that round that qualified them as a unicorn, and calling my co-founder Theo and telling him, "We are good." Overnight, our valuation increased by 30% without doing anything. It's just because now you have the halo effect of, hey, something interesting is happening in Southeast Europe. So this is no longer the no man's land. This is an area where there's a stable where they breed unicorns. Yeah. So and I think that happened, and it happened in a number of waves. The first wave being the increased focus from the larger funds who are now scouting explicitly in this part of the world, and they were not doing that, with a few exceptions before. In a second thing, with creating, and this has evolved in time, creating a universe of tens of people that were early employees of UiPath, and upon UiPath being listed, they got a pretty liquid, sizable fortune. They started to reinvest in what they knew best, which is technology startups to some extent. And this is creating let's say, it's putting a pressure of smart technology money for the startup ecosystem, with these guys coming back with their investments. And there's not only their investments, their knowledge of having been in a company that grew fast and created an impact at the global level at some point. And then also in the aftermath of that, it's part of if you want, the public speech, the fact that, hey, we need to create an environment that would foster the creation of the next unicorns in the region. And because of that, you have some level of public discussion that allowed for more venture capital funds, like proper venture capital funds, to be raised and created in the region ever since. And then those funds have started to invest further and so on. So there's a whole thing. I think an ecosystem is, at the end of the day, a number of different movements that are all supporting each other in growth. And each of them could have existed independently, but if they all exist at the same time, tapping into the same pool of, let's say, human resources of individuals that are building that ecosystem, then you have something that becomes very dynamic and very cool to be part of. And because it's cool to be part of and it's very dynamic, then it attracts even more people that were on the sides and had nothing to do with this. So it's more energy and more fun and more opportunity. Some of them totally missed. Some of them, with absolutely no materialization. But still, you have an access to a continuous flow of opportunities and stream of opportunities. And I think this is what's very exciting. I think not only for us here, but whoever is taking a magnifying glass and digging to understand what's happening in the space.
Yes. How do you think, or how far do you think are we from making it a systemic success? Because I think for UiPath, we would all agree that it was an outlier. Yeah. It wasn't typical. But how do we make it, and maybe not all the companies need to become a unicorn. Unicorns are a vanity metric that kind of like, they make waves, they put us on the map, but it's definitely not a KPI that we should follow of how a successful ecosystem is. And still, if we want to create a sort of a incubator for systemic success stories and successful companies, what is needed and how far are we from it? Or are we there yet?
I think I think we are there yet from a certain angle, and that angle is that thing that the American dream of. You can start from, you go to America, you start from anywhere, and you can become a fully accomplished, business person with everything that can be achieved. And I think that American dream has been democratized and is now part of our infrastructure as well. And I think this is the most important part.
Okay.
The other thing is, if you're looking at what, how things are, how systemic this is, I think we have a sizable enough community that has produced a significant enough impact on the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. So it's systemic. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of people because this is actually an intrinsic part. Now, the startup ecosystem and the technology investment ecosystem is an intrinsic part of the technology industry, of the IT&C industry of the region. And the IT&C industry of the region has converged in terms of wages to Western European standards ahead of other sectors of the economy.
Yeah.
So you have already hundreds of thousands of people that are paid at more or less the same level, adjusted for purchasing power parity, as their counterparts in Western Europe. And sometimes they live in more vivid and more dynamic ecosystems than their counterparts. So it's not, how wealthy traditionally a city has been. Look at, I don't know, Madrid, Vienna,
It's actually often the
Lisbon, or something like that,
Yeah.
And how glamorous is in one of these places to be a top IT professional or a technology startup, and how glamorous it is to be a top IT professional or a startup founder in places like Sofia, Bucharest, Skopje, Krakow, So I think from that point of view, we are validating an ecosystem that has produced a systemic change that is empowering these people and this regional talent to a level that it has never been empowered. So from that point of view, now, do we have the institutions to handle that? Do we have the politicians and the public administrators that are able to deal with this in an intelligent way? Obviously not. No, but I'm more in part of the belief, and there is part of some in my background that you haven't mentioned. I'm a board member of the Romanian Business Leaders Foundation. So I believe it's, together with the Romanian business leaders, I believe that it is in our hands as business people to create a better society, and it is much more in our hands than it is in the politicians' hands. So if we create a business environment where we, work hard, ethically, we, pay our dues, we are considerate of all the stakeholders of the businesses, including the society at large, then we probably, by us working together and helping each other to learn faster, to build faster, to be, if you want, less obsessed about the greatness of what we have built and more about the opportunities that lie ahead of us in order to get to the next level, then probably this is the ecosystem that can create a systemic change. And again, is this leaving behind the public sector? Yes, it is. The public sector is not at the same level. It still has to catch up. But it's also, I think, at this moment, our duty to some extent to preach, teach, and make understand, to reestablish somehow a level, a flow of true professionals that are getting into the public sector, such that we can have our counterparts that would understand what we are doing, that would be able to work to facilitate what we are doing. This is not something that will be solved in the next 2 years or by a politician winning the next elections. But it is something that will happen over the next 20 years, with a bit of luck, in this space, because we have the mass.
Actually, the hubs that have developed in a relatively short amount of time to a global relevance scale, they did it because there were probably also politicians and administrators who had a long-term vision that would extend beyond the next elections. This is what we see.
Yeah.
We collected at some point, the strategy papers for Tel Aviv, for Singapore, for all of these, hubs which, in a short amount of time relatively became a relevant hub
Yeah.
for founders, investors, and they also attracted a lot of talent.
Yeah.
Not only local ones, not only those who had the same background, but actually a lot of talent that was coming from abroad. In this sense, I'm actually curious. What do you think? Is there a place for tech entrepreneurs in politics? Do you think that maybe when you say this, we need to take it in our hands, we need to engage on this level as well? It's a trick question, I know.
I think
But
yeah.
And I've heard that other podcasts that people in the Silicon Valley would consider that their mistake, that they didn't engage soon enough, that there was no one who would actually say, okay, I'm going to take on that.
The political ecosystem is a very different ecosystem than the business ecosystem. And the way success is materialized is very different from the way success is materialized on the business side. So from my point of view, it takes, unfortunately, different skills and different, let's say, ability to harmonize different stakeholders' interests.
True.
And I'm not sure there is a clear overlap. Don't get me wrong, I fully admire those few individuals that have made the transition and they have taken the bull by the horns and decided to step in order to make a change, including Vasil, the mayor of Sofia. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but for me, he's the first example that I'm thinking of in this particular journey. It's very few people. I think they are desperately lonely in their endeavors, and I really wish them the best. I think we ought to help and support them because they understand the ecosystem and they are far more able to carry what the agenda of the industry, understanding that the agenda of the industry is, I have no doubt, beneficiary for the society at large in all aspects. But I think it's a long journey and it's a mission, it's a personal mission that one must feel inside themselves in order to go that route, because it's a lot worse as a personal experience from my expectations compared to starting a startup, which is already difficult and struggling and painful and all that.
Soul-crushing, actually.
So I'm.
But it's a great sacrifice
yeah.
that you have to make.
Yeah.
I totally agree here with you. Before we talk about the society in general, I want us also to get back a bit more to you as a person. You mentioned something interesting that the American dream is got democratized.
Yeah.
There will be probably people in the States who would say that the American dream is dead. But
I read some things,
But obviously now it lives in Eastern Europe, which is an interesting paradox. So
we are laughing about it. We are laughing about it, but there is so much truth in it. If you talk to a big number of people, especially if you listen to what the public discourse is now, because then it's more visible in Europe these days because you have the elections in the States, so then everybody listens to it and so on. But there's a lot of debate around the fact that you starting small and doing the middle class thing, you were able to have a wonderful life in America like 30 years ago. And now maybe that's a bit more complicated because of the cost of education, because of the cost of housing, because of the cost of whatever, which is not in line with the revenues that a middle class family would be making. While at the same time, you have a slim yet middle class in Central Eastern Europe that basically has all that access. So it's very interesting for me to see that, and it's also about that this is also subjective and personal, because hey, as there's one thing when, I am doing this thing, which is an equivalent job in terms of social and economic impact with my parents, but yet I can achieve less. While everybody in Central Eastern Europe, if I'm doing more or less the same kind of level as my parents, I'm definitely well off compared to them. And this is something that, gives a certain level of confidence of what we can achieve in our personal lives. So, well, if you look from a distance, what's this arrogance? I mean, how can you say that you can do things in Central Eastern Europe that they can't do in America? But there is a seed of truth in there, because if you're at least, the top professionals in technology and, some reasonably successful, let's say, founders of small companies that had nothing to, started their companies with $2,000 from their pockets. Well, this is the reality. This is a true reality in cities in our region,
yes.
And you can't ignore it.
We are actually in an amazing sandbox right now to test whatever idea you might have. And this is also one of the reasons why I decided to come back. Which, I would actually comment is something that our political system did right. And I'm not talking so much about the local ones, but maybe the European one that, set at least, this kind of social systems that allow us to have a certain safety net. Something that we don't see in the US at all. Yeah, and I think this is maybe also something that encourages us to play a bit more, to test a bit more. Of course, we're also...
I'm still a big admirer
we
of
have
America.
learned also, I think, a lot from the economic crises that we've been through. There was this joke about, the crisis, traveling to different worlds, and finally it got back. We would say Bulgaria to Bulgarians, say, "Oh, it's good to be home." Anyway,
the other joke is, that this area is so behind compared to the civilized world that even if the apocalypse comes, we still have, a few nice years maybe to take care of, because it will not reach us anytime soon.
Exactly, it will arrive a bit slower. Yeah. But in any case, my point here was that we learned a lot on how to survive on pretty much nothing. So what we see is also our successful companies and also our unicorns being created with much less resources than whatever in the world.
But that's changing.
Yes,
that's changing. Yeah, I don't think it's so easy to start with nothing as it used to be like 10, 15 years ago, simply because there is an abundance of resources, and those who have access to those resources would
spend them.
Would move faster.
Yes, and also because engineers are becoming expensive everywhere actually in the world. In any case, I wanted to bring you to your American dream. And when did you start dreaming the American dream? Why did you decide to go into entrepreneurship? It was actually probably before it became hip.
I don't know, because I'm this poor boy that at some point when I got to be a programmer, and I was pretty good as a programmer while I was very young, and but I was still a bit obsessed with why the heck are we so poor? I mean, what's happening differently here that we can't really match? Once we were free, under communism I understood, but once we were free, why can't we match the living standards at least to a comparable level to what was happening in the Western world? And I started to study, and I thought of, hey, why don't I try to do more, to understand more? I made so I think my personal journey was that where, for personal reasons, I decided I'm not willing to leave the country. When at the end of university, when many of my colleagues have left with scholarships or stuff like that, and then a few years later, I realized, shit, this is not very good. What is happening here? So I thought, hey, we still had at that moment, everyone had that American dream, and the American dream for the significant part of the population here was realized by leaving the country for places that were as close to the American dream as possible which in many cases were, in fact, Western European countries.
Yes.
So, and this is a wave of people that left with disappointment and looked back, sometimes with resentment,
Yes.
and sometimes still hating a reality that is no longer the reality here. So and at some point I thought, hey, I need to go and do that myself. I was stuck in an industry with a kind of a job that I did not like. So I started to think of, hey, how about, I get some level of education, because that's the only thing that I was good at, like learning. I get a certain level of education that is on par with the best other people that are educated in business. So go to a top-notch MBA. That was my route to escape, if you want. Mm-hmm. So I realized, unfortunately, that was very expensive for me. I did not believe in scholarships, because I thought, who would give me a scholarship? So I thought, okay, how do I make the money to pay for an expensive MBA? And that's when I set my first company. But to be frank, that was more in the area of freelancing, because you have a small company that does a little bit of trading and advisory and has 2-3 employees. That's more a bit of advanced freelancing than true entrepreneurship. But it helped me make the money.
Yeah.
So I did make the money. I did pay for the that was okay. So in a way it was driven by, hey, I want to change the life of my family and be able to have a Western style, Western lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then it happened, and then I went to that MBA, and I spent a few years in Austria and in Switzerland, and I had a Western lifestyle, and I realized, hey, maybe I want something more. And the opportunities to create that more were in my mind at the time, a lot more by going back home and applying what I had learned, rather than staying there and contributing to an already developed ecosystem.
That's interesting, because that's exactly the feeling that I felt. I lived like 11 years in Austria, in Vienna, the most livable city. And it is.
It's a lovely place.
It's a lovely place. I would recommend to everyone, to, see it, to move there even for a while. But at some point I felt like I spent 11 years trying to fit into a system that is already functioning and existing. And I really felt like I could be authentic there, because I was, trying to fit in.
You can fit in as a guest. You can't fit in as a host. And if you want to be the host, if you want to build your own thing, then you probably do it much better in your home culture, home environment. So for me, this is how it worked. And there was also something, a catalyst for me. Vienna was a wonderful experience, but I realized that to the full extent only when I left for Switzerland, which is even further away in terms of mentality and way of living compared to the Balkans.
But for Eastern Europeans, Switzerland is always seen as the holy land, and it's like this is where everything is great. Okay, tell me about
precisely.
Your
Everything is great. Isn't that shitty?
I was at some point desperately looking for a place that is actually messy, that is not so. Everything has felt like sterile. Like you can't. Yeah. There are no market niches.
I have this personal story of the kid that was so eager to travel outside of Eastern Europe. So I got my first car. That was a Dacia, of course, and I drove my car to the west, and that was in the 90s. And I went to Austria, and I saw things like a newspaper in bags that people could take and read. And they would do that, and there would still be newspapers in that bag, and nobody would steal them. I've seen clean infrastructure, clean roads that were smelling like detergent and stuff like that. I said, what? Where is this? This is like a totally different planet, and I could not imagine my own people ever being able to achieve that.
Let me give you, that is actually a funny fact, because I was working for a magazine that actually had their magazines in these bags on Sunday. And we would compare, because they actually have also a little, how do you call it, like a coin box. Yeah. You are supposed to pay actually for it. And we would see the revenue generated in the different areas of Vienna. And what you would see is that actually most of the money was spent in the areas where you would have the higher degree of people with a different background than Austrian. Turkish, Serbian, Bosnian. So actually it is the people who came from Eastern Europe who felt more the peer pressure to put money than the Viennese,
because
the rules
precisely because
themselves.
I am here. I want to act like a local and be respected like a local because I'm doing the right thing. No, but coming back to
Sorry, there.
coming back to my own story, I was desperate. I said, look, this can never happen. And by the way, to some extent, it happened. So it's reasonably clean and reasonably organized, and people are no longer destroying common property, and so we've gone a long way. But on that particular journey, I remember then crossing the border into Italy, and then North Italy, Mid Italy, South Italy, and then relax. So, relax.
I feel like home now.
This is a cultural model that we can definitely replicate. So,
okay. I get it. Okay, so you returned.
Yeah. So I that's why when I said when I moved to Switzerland, obviously it was a bit too sterile, too predictable, everything well organized, very difficult to implement change because if it ain't broke, why fix it? So for me, it's an excellent place if you want to fit in and you would have everything around you to support you in that, fitting into an already made environment. But if you were to build something new, if you were to create or to improve, to have an impact and all that, I figured at some point I'd be better off if I...
So you came back to build and to create change?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And
Did you have an idea of how
I thought it would be more fun and at personal level.
Yeah.
And I got encouraged by the fact that this was, at a time when our countries were getting into NATO and European Union and so on.
What year? That's 2006,
yeah,
2007.
5, 6, 7. That's that was the first time when you could really see change from a year to the next in terms of the way things were done. And a bit of economic boom, the first real estate bubble, if you want.
True.
And stuff like that. So for that, it was the first time when I thought, hey, there is hope. There is hope.
That's
and
when
now
I left. I didn't feel this way.
The funny thing is, now having, a good MBA from a good school, and the relationship with my colleagues, my fellow alumni from the school, I had this sort of arrogance that, hey, number one, I can address a business situation and make good quality decisions, on par with what others would do. And I had also this second arrogance that, if shit happens, I also have a resume that would qualify me to, start all over again from somewhere else in a more developed society. So I had ticked my fear box.
Yeah.
And I'm good. I'm well off. I can potentially come back.
And this is when you start playing a bit with the world, because when you actually have this foundation, from there you can start a bit, experimenting a bit more, because you're never going to really go back.
I think there's a lot about how strong your safety net is.
Yeah.
If you fail, how bad that failure is, and when you try new things, some people are a bit, more adventurous than others. Mm-hmm. For me, it was always relevant when I took something that was risky to understand if shit happens, okay, where's my safety net? And typically, the safety net is, everybody recommends you that you have savings to cover 6 months of living expenses, for instance. Mm-hmm. You have 6 months of living expenses, then you can try things. You don't have 6 months of living expenses, you better not get to the point where you're dead hungry and you have to get a job tomorrow.
Rational, but I know riskier people than that.
Exactly,
anyway.
exactly. But I'm not. I'm not.
You're
that,
actually not.
So I'm not that. I'm not going to go that recklessly into something. And at a completely different level. When we started FintechOS, it's damn risky to start a startup and put your money and reputation into something like that. So my mental safety net was that, hey, I can always go back to what I've been doing before, a little bit of consulting and a bit of, small investment. But the thing that was more important is, hey, the self-narrative was, hey, if this grows big, I'm going to be, very happy and everybody will talk to me and so on. If this goes bust, I may be able to write a very interesting study book or something else about how I burned X million and achieved nothing.
I have a couple of interesting questions. So first of all, how does failure now look like? Because, I'm thinking over time, and I'm 37 now, that it's not only about, the resources, the money, and the reputation, but it is also about time. And actually the big scarcity is actually time.
Time.
At the end. And if I'm going to invest my time into something, it should better work. Otherwise, I cannot take it back. Because somehow reputation, maybe you can rebuild. Money can be earned. I always treated money as something that you can go and actually earn it at some point. And how much money do you actually make? You need, to be happy.
For a beautiful life.
Exactly. So
there's not that much money actually, which is very good. So from that point of view, again, the safety net is pretty high. As long as you're living in a country where there is a middle class and the middle class has a good standard of living, so it's not, you don't have to be top of the 1% in order to have a good life. You're reasonably off being in the top quartile. Or even somewhere around the average, you can have a good life. So I think that's very valuable, and the fact that we have achieved this in the cities in the region is actually the big safety net. If you're a good professional that knows their job, their trade reasonably well, you're going to get a job that will pay you well enough to live a nice life. Sure. Because that's the other thing. The most important joys in life, the most important achievements, and are the very small pieces of life. Meeting friends, family, participating in an event, hugging someone dear. That's having a good dinner with a good conversation with some people. These are the small joys in life that I think are very valuable, and they do not cost money.
They say that the most expensive things in the world are actually free, right?
True. But coming back to the...
So, how would you define the failure that would scare you today? I'm actually curious.
I'm not thinking that much of failure.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more of success.
Okay.
So failure would be the opposite of success. So I will have to define it like that. So success.
What is
me,
then success today?
Success is contributing to a better world, which is very abstract and very idealistic. I
think
that.
You have always been like this a bit. but now you have accepted this part of you.
So I think I have come to peace with myself on that. And then you do it on the things that you can contribute with. So you're a researcher, you push the frontier of knowledge further away. And that's an achievement that everybody benefits of. You're good. You're a family person. You give and birth. You grow the next generation. You create other valuable members of the society, and so on. You are an engineer. You contribute by creating good quality something, work, services, products that make the world easier to be consumed, the reality being easier to be consumed by everyone. You have this restlessness that forces you to do something as crazy as entrepreneurship, then obviously is about putting bits and pieces, trying is not even putting, trying to put bits and pieces together of other experiences and knowledge into some new initiative that could grow and generate wealth and generate impact and so on. So I think we all have our own ways of contributing into something. Definitely. And that contribution is extremely valuable for each of us. And to some extent, contribution itself, with a little bit of acknowledgement, if you want, because we all need that kind of supporting. We want to be included, so a bit of acknowledgement for that contribution, which is not necessarily on par. So, but the important thing is to be able to contribute valuable things to a better society. And if you do that, I think you're good. That's success. Inability to contribute something to a more valuable society, I think that is failure. Then if I'm putting it, failure. Okay. That's why it's equal for us if we have personal failures, and our families, and or we have then you have professional failures. I could not get to a place where my contribution was not accepted. You lose a job or something like that. That's perceived as because you can't contribute anymore. You don't build that thing anymore. So you have to start from somewhere lower and contribute further. So I think it's being able to contribute.
And what is your way of contributing? I don't know. I'm thinking. Do you believe that maybe it's a good tactic to visualize success, and if success means being able to contribute to have a meaningful impact or change on at least the world around you, do you visualize it in some way?
Being able to contribute in a meaningful way that is, if you want, aligned with your own expectations and managing your own expectations, such that there is an alignment there. So it's a bit more than that. But I think yes, understanding what's your contribution, and that is, if that is useful and it's used and accepted and to a certain extent commended and rewarded, then this is something, of course, that makes sense and that gives you that.
But what is your way?
My way is.
How do you visualize it? Do you visualize, I don't know, an evening where you're just sitting somewhere?
No, my way is contributing wherever I can. So for me, once I learned that, and getting people that don't know it. I've been a pretty good networker at the beginning. I came back to Romania, nobody knew me, so I started showing up at events and meeting people. And then at some point I started to introduce people one to another. You have to meet this guy. Having absolutely no material interest in that, but hey, I don't know, it's this thing ought to create something better if these two persons talk to each other. And
how do you feel when they find a way to work together?
Really happy.
Right.
Yeah, really happy. I godfathered something.
It's really good. It's really good.
So it's
Okay. So what about teaching? How does it make you feel?
Precisely the same thing. Teaching is in an alternative world. I would be a full-time teacher. In a
if you didn't have to make money, you would be a teacher.
In a tribe, not really. Because I believe in I'm not an academic. I'm not a researcher. Yeah. I'm not trying to push further the frontier of knowledge. This is perhaps something that I toyed with in my mind when I was a child as a potential career, but it occurred to me that I ended up in business, and business is a craft. Business is not a science, and as a craft, you have to try things with your own hands and make them work, or understand how they can't make. So teaching business for me is like teaching a craft, like you being the experienced shoemaker, and precisely, and having your apprentice and trying to teach them practically how you do how you make a good shoe.
By the way, because I think you have probably a good feeling after you're spending time with your students. What is the business knowledge that we mostly lack here? Because I think we talk often enough that we are great engineers, but we are not great at, these and these things. And I wonder, can we go a bit more specific? Like, what else do we need to learn about this craft? And I love that you're calling it craft. Yeah.
Let me take a step back from the craft.
Yeah.
I have this conviction after going to one of the top business schools and having gotten an MBA from, and while I continue to go to the big schools like almost every year when I can afford the time to participate in one course that is about entrepreneurship or business growth or innovation, which are things that I care about. So it's a craft that is pretty complicated because it can use a lot of knowledge, like structured knowledge. That's why you have all the business books and all the Harvard Business Reviews of the universe and the articles and the things that make lots of case studies and try to put a little bit of order in our knowledge of shoemaking. So it's a bit more complicated shoemaking than the.
Would you recommend to an entrepreneur actually to go into that literature, to read a bit more about?
I think everyone needs to learn. I think many people learn in many different ways. I do believe that if you're an entrepreneur is fundamentally a business person. So I do believe that if you put a bit of structure in your business knowledge, you end up becoming better. If you're trying it the pure academic way and you're looking at, learning the Black-Scholes valuation, whatever, in finance, that may not be the best route. But understanding, let's say, a little bit of corporate finance in order to understand what are the differences between you and your competitors by just looking at the financial statements, that might be valuable.
Understanding a little bit of... To understand your financial statements,
Bravo.
That's also the other
so
thing.
I think from that point of view, I think having this, let's say, generalist, not extremely deep, not extremely academic, generalist understanding of the main subjects that an MBA would cover, and apply them, feel them in your guts and apply them into your business, into your trade, now that is something.
And where do we suck the most?
Where do we lack the most? What do we lack the most? I think we tend to be very good theoreticians in the area, and we do not have this mix of theory and practice at the level where we can easily juggle with both. To the level that we still let's say make a lot of mistakes because we ignore a theory that it would be very easy for us as theoreticians to learn, but it would be a different thing. Like theory is theory, and these are some lessons that you learn in order to pass an exam and you can get a good grade. But then real business knowledge is something else, and there is absolutely no connection between the two. While I think in a more evolved society, integrating, by the way, wink to the how can we contribute, these are better linked together. The trade of the craft of business has a bit of theory and practice combined that can work together, and I think I'm contributing a bit of that.
Okay. Yeah, probably the model would be still like apprenticeship. You just shadow someone who is actually doing it, and then you just see how they do it. It's not only the theory.
When I joined the Romanian business leaders, I joined the organization with this is an organization that, because I told you, it's about us as business people taking into our own hands the progress of the business society with benefits for the entire society. So this is important. I joined with a project because the activity is done through projects, initiatives where we work together, of course, free of charge to generate something. And my project at the time was called 101 Companies from Stress to Success. And that was a mentorship program where the ambition was to get a cohort or multiple cohorts adding to 101 small companies or startups getting mentorship from larger entrepreneurs in order to help them with that 0 to 1. And obviously, it took a few years, and then the objective was achieved. So you had already the 101, so you had to reinvent the program, and it became part of a larger project of the community that is now called Entrepreneuria, and it has its own track. But I do believe that if we are good at it, there is learning, and the learning of a craft is by watching a master Jedi doing their craft.
So the peer-to-peer connection, something that we also see in Endeavor, pretty much happening. Where
Yeah.
you're also part
it's
of yes.
It's a good point with Endeavor, because I first heard of Endeavor when in RBL we were looking for models to inspire us, better, older models of entrepreneurial groups of business people that have managed to inspire and grow others. And that's how we came across Endeavor. We had a small interaction at the time with an Endeavor entrepreneur, And then, years later, when Pete and Momcil from Endeavor came to Romania to set up the thing, I think at the time, probably in most of the meetings, they had to explain what Endeavor is.
I remember in my first meeting with Momcil, we sat for at least 1.5 hours, and I got out of the meeting and I was like, I still don't know what Endeavor is.
Yeah, and you realize that they had a meeting with me. They were coming here and they had a number of meetings with local business people, and they did not have to explain one thing. I was like ecstatic that they came, and I told them, look, come on, you start from this and you do that. You have to engage this guy and that lady and this and then, So yeah.
Great. Great. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Now, I wonder also, how do you manage the context switching? Now, you are operationally very much involved in FintechOS, and you obviously have a lot of skin in the game. You are an active angel investor, and you're probably also involved in, taking care of your investments, because you also have their skin in the game. You're a founding partner of Cleverage, which is health tech or healthcare related focus.
Yeah. Health tech, med tech.
Which is actually, a topic that can go very deep. So I guess in order to make investment decisions, you need to learn yourself probably very interesting new things. You're part of Endeavor, you're part of the Romanian business leaders, and probably also other organizations. To be honest, I haven't checked your LinkedIn profile lately, but probably there are also other positions there. How do you manage the context switching? Because all of these roles, they require a different version of Sergiu. And for me, I'm sorry, that's very egoistical, but for me, this is like the most difficult challenge that I have right now. It's just tiring at some point.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is, and it's very demanding in terms of time.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a part of my personal life and family life that is taking the toll for that. So I'm not necessarily recommending it as the best way to live and do things. In my case, the way I have there are two things. There's one thing that is operational management. I mean, doing things right, diligently, with structured work every day. And I realized that while I can do that, I'm not one of the best at doing that. Okay. And then there is a part of exploring, of what if, new business cases, new ideas, expansion, innovation, And I think I'm better at that part. But for the large majority of the businesses, the structured as is, now I'm the academic part of it, the exploitation part, if you want, in the ambidextrous world, the exploitation part of it has to take the majority. It's only the very early stage of a startup that is pure exploration.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you have achieved something, you have a business model, you're making money, it's exploitation. Yeah. And then there's the exploration. So I can do more roles of exploration in parallel, because none of that is, the fundamental 100% thing that I need to do. And the other thing is that I am in none of these trades, if you want. I am the number one responsible CEO. Okay. Yeah? In FintechOS, I'm the second co-founder, with Doru, who has taken from the first day the initiative of being the CEO, of running the company and coordinating everything. And I have helped with a big involvement of my time for a long period of time by supporting certain streams and managing, if you want, the fundraise and the relationship with the investors for which was, of course, extremely demanding. But at the same time, even if you do a full-time job, let's say full-time job is full-time activity can take, let's say, a full-time job. A full-time job should be taking 80% of your, let's say, professional span.
Okay.
The 20%, there is a 20% that you can do on top of your, whatever, 8-10 hours per day, which comes in a different way. It's your personal learning as a professional. You know? So your personal learning as a professional happens. For the curious people that still want to advance in their career, there is a bit of reading that is not directly related to what you are doing on your job, but still part of your trade to some extent. And for me, I learned very, very early that I am one source of me being useful to the companies that I interact with is by understanding and applying things that I've seen successful in a different context. And that's why I've been in so many roles, because each of those roles contribute with a learning that is applicable not directly to a different area of activity and expertise, if you want. Yeah.
So in a sense, creating these new associations, being creative and making these unusual combinations, combining, it's like lateral thinking pretty much, yeah.
To some extent. So innovation is most of the time, I'm talking about, is very interesting. In business, we don't do radical innovation most of the time. We do a little bit of innovation, which is applying in a new setting something that has been used in a different setting.
Yes.
If you look at the blue ocean strategy is about eliminating some of the things in business that cost too much money and are not impactful, and adding some things from a different industry and bundling in a different way that creates more value for a new segment of clients. So I think this is the essence of it, is trying to combine things from different areas. Yeah. And I was extremely happy, and this is one narrative, is about how you combine things from different experiences that you have seen in different industries that might create value for a particular client when I was a consultant, for a particular company, for a particular use case, for even when you do mentorship or when you act as a board member for a company. This is my thinking. But there is something else. And I've come across last year in one of these summer courses that I'm taking with the big schools. This professor at Harvard, I'm trying to remember her name now.
That's one of the problems that I experience with too much context switching. Names don't come that easily. And she we can add it afterwards.
She wrote a book that talks about the portfolio life. And the portfolio life is, and funny enough, she has an introduction saying that portfolio life is driven also in the US by this crisis of the middle class that we were talking about earlier, and the fact that what used to be a full-time job in the past and was rewarding and and you had a career that went linear for your 35 years of career is no longer applicable. And what she says, and she's creating a full theory around that, is this portfolio life means that you, at any given moment, you may have one main job and a hobby that can become your next job, or a hobby that can, be a sort of part-time job at some point, or can be another trade. And that allows you to juggle, if you want, with more opportunities at the same time. And talking now about career opportunities. And it gives you the opportunity to make a smoother transition when one ends and the other one needs to start, and to scale, a portfolio of gigs as opposed to a full-time job, which is, coming back to the dynamics of work in the 21st century and stuff like that.
So obviously, all healthy portfolios are diversified. When it comes to money, when it comes to products, but obviously also when it comes to career choices and skills.
I'm not sure it's that simple with the careers, because I think historically we're still in a stage where you have to have in most of the cases, you have to have a primary job that is working, and there is a learning curve, and if you do spray and pray on your career and you just do 10% allocation on everything, you don't end up being good enough at anything to really progress in that career. So I think from that point of view, careers can't really be a diversified portfolio, except over time they can be. If you take the rule of the maybe 10,000 hours, whatever, which is wrong academically speaking, but anyway, if you take the rule of thumb of 10,000 hours, which is 5 years of full-time work into something that qualifies you to become a professional in something that you don't know about, then probably this is the transition time that we need to consider, and how you accumulate that kind of experience and how you build that portfolio. So it is a portfolio where each stream has a huge inertia of you qualifying to know something about that sector.
But even in a company, you don't start working on a diversified portfolio of products at the beginning.
Precisely.
You do it one after the other. That's why we call it strategy.
Yes, you start with an MVP at the end of the day. One MVP, not a portfolio of MVPs. Start with an MVP, and then you tweak, you add, you test, you move, and so on. I think this kind of let's say, very interesting product-led growth vision of
your career.
Of career making is potentially interesting.
Is this diversity making you happy? It is something that is, I don't know, closer to your authentic Sergio? Being involved in different...
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is.
And it doesn't necessarily apply for everyone.
I think it is. So in my case, by not having necessarily a desire to control something, and being always inclined to share. So to share my knowledge, and maybe have someone else to really run the show and do everything operational and so on. I think for me it worked perfectly, because it's a good alignment between who I am and what I'm good at, and what basically allows me to contribute, coming back to value creation and whatever success may be.
A happy number two.
Happy number two. I used to say that was way back I'm not a good number one, but I'm a very good number two. And if I were if I were making the parallel with the Oscars, I would never be the best actor, but every second year I would be considered for best actor in a supporting role. So.
I see. A happy supporting role. Wow, that's actually also very mature to say, because I think there is also a lot of ego involved when you first step into entrepreneurship. At least that's what I observe and what I see. Yeah. And it is important over time to find your way of contributing, and it's not necessarily always as the CEO and not always as a unicorn founder, or there are many ways where you can actually be successful and more importantly happy, by accepting that you could be the number two. I always felt, by the way, it's the same for me. It took me a bit of time to understand that I function better when I feel like I'm serving some kind of like a bigger purpose. Yeah,
definitely.
Because otherwise I'm completely scattered and I don't have the discipline, and there is I get lost in my own chaos. But if there is a bigger purpose that I'm serving, then I can get myself together, even if I don't want to, and push myself and do stuff that I wouldn't enjoy, which is also a big part of being successful and an entrepreneur, or actually developing a career. Often you are doing stuff which are not fun at all.
Yeah, that don't
Yeah.
imagine that I do only think that are extremely funny and
Yeah, but sometimes I'm looking
it's
at
not
Gen Zs, and I'm thinking you actually think that careers
there's-
should be fun all the time, or I don't know.
yeah, but it's a matter of also the eyes that you can how you look at things.
Yeah.
So yeah, things can be fun. Something that is really hard and makes you miserable can be fun if you're a bit ironic. And that's also a very powerful tool that Gen Z is very good at. So I think taking a bit of self-irony and making things a bit relative, because we all have to kiss frogs eventually in our daily trade.
Sure.
Yeah, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, you have to fire people. That's shitty. It's not something that everybody really wants to do, but you have to do it because of work necessity, for instance. And it's not that that really everything that you do has to be fun, because I think you have to have a purpose. You have to be building something. You have to be contributing to something, not in sequences of hours, but maybe in sequences of years of work. And work sometimes is exhausting. It's not fun at all. So
we're coming back to the marshmallows
yeah.
and the postponed gratification. I mean, sometimes you should be able actually to postpone
I was saving the
yeah.
marshmallows.
Yeah. You were saving.
I was saving the marshmallows.
Part of the experiment.
I had a little box as a child with a chocolates that I got, and I would have never eaten the whole chocolate all at once at the time. So.
I guess it's what we learned, in Eastern Europe partially, that you cannot rely on the chocolates every day. You have to save them. What do you think is going to be the next thing that you're going to reinvent yourself again, that is going to create even more fun and even a different way of supporting this ecosystem?
I have no clue, but I'm really curious. At the same time, the reason that I'm really curious is that historically, every time when I managed to take a little bit of a step back and allowed myself to rethink things and learn a bit more, something came up. That was based on the knowledge that I had built and on the experiences and with the people that I had met, but different and new and fun.
So packaging, knowledge and experience, and then I have a new idea.
I'm pretty confident and let's say looking forward with joy at that. And this is about something that we touched earlier, where you said that the most difficult, most expensive thing in our life is time. So I think it's expensive, but it's a resource that you can manage, and you can accelerate time with money. So if you want to try new things that will take a while to build or so, with a little bit of money, especially other people's money, you can make that thing a bit faster, or actually much faster. So you gain some time with money. And then you can also, in terms of own progress, you can always look at, hey, there is, for as long as you can afford, biologically, a horizon of thinking of 5 years, and the thing that in 5 years you can be really good at something that you don't know anything about. That, if you put these things together, there is always an opportunity for someone to bridge, create a smooth transition, create an alternative version of themselves that would be able to achieve things that are completely different from what you're achieving today. And for me, that worked, because there were sequences in my life when I moved from one trade to another, from one kind of business, one kind of industry, one kind of geography to another. So they worked. This approach worked for me so far. I have no reason to believe it will not continue to work. And I have no reason to believe it's not valuable, maybe for others not necessarily to try, but at least to consider because that gives you a better, a more relaxed view. And I think, being a bit more relaxed about, not taking ourselves too serious or too dramatic about our failures is an important way of, coping with a reality and moving on. And why not be, if not happy, at least at peace with frogs that we have to kiss, and at the same time be in a position to build, to contribute, to be happy with our contribution, and why not have the society be happy with our contribution, to the sense that we also get a little bit of reward in that. There is a bit of ikigai in all that,
Yeah, I was just thinking. I didn't want to mention it because it's such a buzz thing, to say.
Yeah, so
I would prefer when you say it in your own words. I'm not gonna, stick to the common buzzwords. But okay, to the end, can you tell me which are the current topics where you feel like you would be more excited to learn right now? Like, if you had to spend this 5,000 hours, where would you actually spend them? I mean, what would you read about right now? Or what would you try to learn about? Or, I don't know, ask your mentors about? Because you probably also have your own mentors.
I do. I think...
What is the topic? Which are the topics of passion right now?
I at this moment, I'm trying to be open and to understand a few things. I'm fascinated with this area of social entrepreneurship, impact investment, and everything that is trying to integrate this dual purpose of making money and making good.
Hacking the system,
Yeah, and I think there is, to this day, impact funds are junior to 7 levels down to, really money-making funds. Social enterprises tend to be much smaller in turnover, in revenue, and everything compared to like big enterprises. So there's maybe there is a way to bridge. Maybe there is already knowledge being brought into this, such that these two trends can live together stronger, and that's one thing that I'm watching. The other thing that I'm watching is more common, and I think everybody does it, and this is the area of artificial intelligence. Because I'm looking at the fact that, and this is, if you want, the computer engineer in me that is has been put to a corner for a very long time. And I'm not looking necessarily technically, but you have two categories of discussion about artificial intelligence. One is the very practical: what can we do with it? What is the kind of output that we can get at this moment? But the other one is very abstract and driven primarily by people that don't understand the first part, which is the big thing: impact, ethics, whatever. If the our species would be raised by the machines that we are going to that we're creating. So I think also in this particular space, what we have now, we have the one technology of AI, which is the traditional machine learning, that is getting mature and is being exploited as we speak in many cases, and the new breed of machine learning, which is the Gen AI, that is more about creating new alternatives of creating new hypotheses, not only, or creating new frameworks, not only extrapolating necessarily from the ones. And I think if we can put the two things together, once there is more maturity on the Gen AI part, I think there's a whole new level of value that would be unlocked for the society. But I'm not smart enough, and I haven't figured that thing yet. I know something ought to happen in that dialogue between traditional numbers-driven machine learning and LLMs like Gen AI. I do not understand well enough what is happening in the market right now to be able to extrapolate and to understand the next important moves. But this is, my own nerdish dimension, if you want, in trying to
But you're asking
understand
actually a
what it is.
couple of the, I think, at least $1 trillion questions that we have in the society
Yeah,
right now.
bravo.
I think this is like, And I guess even if you come closer to an answer, you would still create a great contribution to society. So please continue following that.
There is one
passions.
thing that
Yeah.
I think where my contribution is pretty good is trying to understand things that are reasonably difficult because it takes probably a lot of previous knowledge to get it, and then translating that thing into
Those who can solve it.
translating in very common language and making it teachable
Okay.
to people that have never had the opportunity to dig deeper into that thing. And so if you're simplifying, structuring, and
So that they start thinking with you on them.
such that you can such that you can get to feel the things in our guts. It's like, you learn how to drive, right?
Yeah.
You can read the manual.
I actually don't
10
have a driver's
times.
license, but that's a different story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Riding a bicycle. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay,
I'm
good.
good. I'm
So
good.
you
Yeah.
read a manual about how to ride a bicycle. You may not be able to ride the bicycle when you get on the bicycle, right? Got
I don't
it?
think I've ever read it, but yeah, that's
Of course.
a good...
It doesn't even
Yeah.
cross your mind
Yeah,
to do that. By the same token, you can write a book of recipes for cooking, But if you have never cooked, it's going to be difficult for you to move.
Probably.
Once you have done a little bit of cooking, once you have done a little bit of bicycle riding, it's so easy for you to learn new tricks if somebody teaches you those tricks. So I think is about simplifying knowledge, like in the areas that I get to have some knowledge in, to the level that I can pass that and give a lot of people access to a practical view, simplified. For the reason that it's simplified, not necessarily 100% scientifically correct, but usable in everyday life and
I think you do
business.
it for a very egoistic reasons. Yeah, I think you do it because you want
Tell
even
me.
more people to start thinking about these problems with you, so that you're not alone in them. Just joking, of course.
It could be that. Not sure that is egoistic, but it definitely is something that, hey, if it's not about solving problems that the mankind need to solve, is
But with you,
solving
actually with
problems
you.
that would make the world better.
Yeah. No, I think with you, because we should be actually making the world better. I'm fed up with being stuck in the same problems again and again, and for generations. I'm not gonna name them because I don't want to spoil the mood. We should end on a high note.
We are absolutely. I think we're quite successful. We have been quite successful, at least in this part of the universe.
True.
In creating a better society than the one that we have inherited.
True.
For at least one generation, So for at least the last 20 years, I think we've been, reasonably successful in creating a better world, at least a better business environment, at least, so from sometimes a better infrastructure, sometimes, better values, from the humanistic and socially contributing point of view.
And maybe even more,
I think it's,
more confident and more fulfilled people around us.
I think exactly. Yeah. So I think we have something that can be built upon, and not many societies have that.
Yeah.
Not many societies have that.
I also relate to what you're saying. I'm actually excited to where can we go from here. Yeah.
I'm not sure where we can go, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And if we keep a good mood and positive feelings, and we are motivated about doing good, in the greater, broader sense of the world, that
it cannot go.
It cannot be that
such
bad.
a bad place.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, let's hope so. Yeah. They say that the road to hell is also filled with good intentions, but Thank you so much for being here.
And if you're just as passionate about innovation as we are, hit subscribe for the Recursive Podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. We're everywhere.